DVS_insanity in the AskReddit subreddit says, Anesthesiologists of Reddit, what was something you won't forget hearing from someone that was under?
Can I tell an ambient story? It fits the spirit of the question. My mom worked the night shift for 15 years and couldn't sleep during the day, so her doctor prescribed her some Ambien so she could get some rest. I was maybe 12 or so at the time. One day, she poked her head into my room when she should have been sleeping with the most zonked out expression I've ever seen. Just opened my door, stared at me like a zombie, then shuffled away. She must have done the same thing to my little sister, 8, because she came into my room a second later, clearly horrified. We found my mom in the kitchen, sitting on the bench at the table in a daze. I grabbed the camcorder because this was too weird. We tried to get her to go to bed but she refused until we got her a cup of milk. We did, but she didn't drink it, just stared at it. So we helped her up and told her we were taking her to bed. She refused again, and would only agree if she could put on her slippers. Fine. We walked her to her slippers, but she claimed she couldn't wear them because she only had 2 slippers but 4 feet. I told her no, she's got 2 feet like everyone. She got irritated because she could obviously see 4 feet, like a dog, and she wasn't a dog. So we told her to put 2 of her feet in, and go barefoot with her extra feet. She started doing a weird shuffle jump, trying to get both feet into her slippers at the same time. Eventually, we managed to get her to bed. She remembered none of this when she woke up hours later. Luckily I had the whole ordeal on tape, which she refused to watch out of embarrassment. She never took Ambien again.
After an operation on a patient's neck, he woke up and yelled, "Ah," then grabbed his junk with both hands and was like, "Oh thank God it's still there," then immediately passed out again.
I had an ovarian cyst removed a year ago and woke up from the anesthesia saying hand please, and making grabby hands with both my hands until the nurses finally came over and held my hands for about 5 minutes while I just smiled and tried to go back to sleep. I hadn't done that in a decade. I used to do it to my dad all the time as a kid to express that I wanted to hold his hand while I slept.
My boyfriend at the time had just gotten his wisdom teeth removed. On the ride home with his mouth full of gauze, he gets a call on his cell phone. He answered it and just starts talking away. Whoever it was on the other side could not possibly understand a word he was saying with all the gauze in his mouth. But man, he had a lot to talk about and they apparently didn't hang up. After about 5 minutes of this unintelligible phone conversation he looks at me and says, "Ooh, ithh a robot," and gives me the phone. I put it to my ear, and the whole time it's been the Walgreens pharmacy automated notice simply stating his prescription is ready for pickup, playing on repeat. Probably for the best. I woke up from gallbladder surgery confused as to why my mom wasn't there. I was 18 and looking for my mom. The nurse informed me I had cussed out my entire family and they sent them home and put me on a no-visitor list, only for me to wake up at 2 a.m. with no memory making them call my mom back. Another time I woke up and made horrifically inappropriate jokes. I told a nurse she was pissing me off because I didn't like the automatic blood pressure cuff. Another I refused to listen to follow-up orders until I had a chicken sandwich. My negotiations were not met. I'm a real treat after anesthesia, but I get a lot of this done at the office my mom works at so she can warn them lol.
I ask a patient after surgery how he feels. He opens his eyes, stares me dead on and says with my fingers. Then he goes right back to sleep.
I'm an anesthesiologist. The best story was a 40-some-year-old woman for appendectomy, said while I'm giving the propofol to induce anesthesia. She said, "Oh, I don't remember it tasting like that before," slurred. I said, "What does it taste like, since propofol doesn't usually elicit a taste reaction?" She almost yelled "D's nuts," and was promptly under anesthesia thereafter. There have been other stories, but this one has the entire OR staff rolling laughing for minutes after she was under.
My aunt got rushed to the hospital for abnormal heart rate, but it wasn't a heart attack or stroke, but her heart was going at like 200 beats per minute or whatever it was. They had to put her under so they could shock her heart back. to normal. As they're taking her under, the doctor says something like, "Okay, in it goes," and she immediately quips with, "That's what she said." All the doctors and nurses busted a gut laughing and told my uncle when he got there. He just shrugged and said, "That's my wife for ya."
One summer I was home from college and my dad needed me to pick him up after his very first colonoscopy. He was nervous, so I got there early. The nurse called me back and asked me to help wake him up, as they were having some trouble. I go back and am making chit-chat. "Oh Dad, you've got those cool booties on." He raised his head a little bit to look at them, then yelled, "Booty call." He is a Presbyterian pastor. A moment I will treasure forever.
My husband had to undergo a colonoscopy, and when he came around he started aggressively grilling the staff about Abraham Lincoln. He isn't a historian or anything, he works as a business analyst and knows next to nothing about Abraham Lincoln. Bonus story, one time he took Ambien and got super fucked up. Initially told me that he couldn't walk up the stairs to bed because he was a transformer and his legs had turned to wheels. Finally got him upstairs and he made the observation that if peach trees could sing to each other like whales it would be beautiful. I bet they would sing Adele. Then he burst into tears.
One time a male biology student in his early 20s with a stuck kidney stone, was being put under for surgery, just as the anesthesiologist was pushing meds and telling me to count back from 100. I looked up at him in a drugged but focused gaze and said, "You're so pretty, you could be in movies." Then blackness. Anesthesiologist was like a grizzled 70-year-old hunched-back-looking guy with a lopsided grimace and more ear hair than head hair. Great doc though. Very last thing I remember hearing was the OR nurses cracking up, laughing. It was a smallish medical community and I knew some of the people there, so as a joke somebody snuck his headshot into my chart. I like to think it was him gunning for a second career though. Edit. Due to the rather sensitive nature of the surgery, he hit me with a wallop of midazolam on the way into the OR, so I was already pretty juiced by the time they started.
My personal story. When I had my wisdom teeth out, I kept holding a fake camera up to my face saying, "You're beautiful," and making clicking noises while I was under. I'm a professional photographer and my dental surgeon ended up booking a session with me a year later.
I have no recollection of this, but according to my mom, when she met me in the recovery room after wisdom tooth extraction, I was very eager to tell her something, but my mouth was full of gauze. So they gave me a pen and I wrote something on the surgical bib. Hours later, when I was back in reality, she asked me, "What was with the meow meows, my son?" I had no idea what she was talking about, so she showed me the bib. It said, "Meow meow 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 meow. Meow 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 meow," the Meow Mix theme.
Woke up from nasal surgery strapped to the bed and a very disgruntled anesthesiologist standing over me. He asked if I was awake now and we talked for a minute. He asked me to do everyone a favor if I ever had surgery again and use the words "wakes combative" when describing how I come out of it.
I had a guy, nefarious character, heavy drug use history, who got a bunch of ketamine, probably too much, in recovery from one of the other docs to help with severe pain after his abscess drainage. I was asked to check on him in an hour as the other doc had left for the evening. Went over and saw him in the K-hole drooling on himself but otherwise fine, so I left and came back an hour later. First thing he says to me is, "Why did you do that to me?" I asked him what he meant and he said, "You don't understand, I lived another man's life in there." I apologized and asked him, "How long do you think you were in there?" For reference, it had been something like an hour and a half or 2 hours since his trip began. "I don't know, maybe 30 years, I was speechless. I apologized again, made sure he knew he was safe, made sure he wasn't hurting, and made damn sure he knew it wasn't me that did it to him. TLDR, patient time traveled 30 years in the K-hole.
I once came out of anesthesia after an endoscopy, which can cause you to burp pretty much the whole day, and my fiancé asked, "How are you doing?" I misheard and answered as though she said, "What are you doing?" My answer was, "Little burps," said very confidently. I also started crying on the way home because I wanted one egg. I never crave eggs. Not an anesthesiologist but a story from my mom about me. While I was under, I had a double jaw surgery scheduled for April 21, 2016. The procedure was fine. I remember waking up halfway through it and getting more anesthesia. After the surgery ended, they put me into the hospital room to let the drugs wear off of me. I don't remember much of this time, so this comes from my mom, but she was sitting in the room with me, watching the news on the TV. I wake up and I'm quiet for a little bit before I start sobbing. My mom thinks it's because my mouth hurts. My mouth is wired shut, so I actively can't correct her with words, and have to try and write out, on paper, what I'm crying about. The news was broadcasting about Prince's death, and I was hysterical over the fact that I apparently killed Prince and that I had to turn myself in.
How about the other way around? I took my mom for her surgery on her right shoulder and her anesthesiologist was this very dignified, solemn older Persian gentleman. My mom told him, "Just so you know, I wrote directions on myself to make sure you get it right." She was joking around, but she actually does this. Old battleaxe nurse habits die hard. He looked her straight in the eye and said deadpan, "Great. So let's get started on your left knee." Totally got her. It was great.
Patient here. Came out of anesthesia and heard Gautier's, somebody that I used to know, playing in the recovery room. I asked my so why they were playing it at like 10x the normal speed and the nurse just goes, "Okay, so she's not ready to go home yet, lol."
This guy the first was dating, he asked me to take him to get his wisdom teeth removed. He told me that anesthesia doesn't affect him a lot and we were supposed to go on a road trip the next day. So anyway, he gets wheeled out of the dentist by an old nurse. I'm behind the driver's seat and I see him smacking his lips looking up at the sky. She opens my car door and he said, "I love her, I love her." He then proceeded to ask me to marry him several times. He tried to pull out his gauze and I told him stop and he said, "Man, this bitch is bossy." Then he wanted a milkshake. I would suggest a place and he would scream no. Finally we agree on a place and he tells me he'll give me directions. I drive for 15 minutes before I ask him what we're doing and he said he has no idea. We're in the drive-thru and he says, "I have something for you." I swear I thought he had bought me a ring the way he had been proposing. For last hour, it was his newly extracted teeth. They let me keep them. "I want you to have them." He lived on base at the time and was yelling at the gate while they checked his ID for them to hurry up. I finally get him to his room, in bed. He's happily eating his milkshake with a spoon. His mouth was a mess of blood and milkshake. He asked me for a kiss. I gave him a peck. We're married now. Edit. Wow. Thanks for all the love, y'all. He's just as sweet when he's not sedated too, so I'm a lucky girl. My dad after his second hip replacement, they were eating meatballs after they'd been in a drawer. Gross. Boy, that kid had a doughy rump. Coffee. Siwafi. Coffee. People say things funny. People say things funny at church. Coffee. Siwafi. Cookies. He passed out after each of these.
I was told after surgery I said I love dogs and I want to eat the Taliban.
A friend of mine was doing a type of spine procedure where they fixed part of a broken vertebrae under sedation. He said most people fall right asleep, but every now and then someone just won't fall asleep no matter how much IV anesthesia they get. This guy, that he was doing the procedure on, got so talkative that he was just going on and on about his favorite fishing spots while he was having his broken vertebra fixed. My friend kept asking him if he was in pain or anything, but the guy was like, "I don't feel anything. Anyways, let me tell you about this place I base fish." Guy had the whole procedure awake despite lots of anesthesia and was happy as a clam.
My aunt, who notoriously despises fast food, old Mexican lady whose food is as good as it gets, woke up and looked at my uncle and said, "Are you the sexy man that's gonna take me to McDonald's?" If you knew her you would know that she would never say that. She has never lived it down.
I've told this here before, but maybe 4 months after getting out of an abusive marriage I had surgery for a bad hernia, had it for years but my ex always put barriers in the way of getting it fixed. Post-surgery I was in recovery and all. of the nurses were joking about which Hogwarts house they would be in. I piped up, my ex-wife thought I was a house elf, and drifted back under to lots of laughter.
My husband woke up from anesthesia after a colonoscopy just after the doctor walked in. He didn't see the doctor and told me, "No blowjob for you," then fell back asleep and ripped a big fart. The doctor looked at me and busted out laughing. He said, "Not to be embarrassed, people say the weirdest things, but this one he'd remember."
My mom woke up from dental surgery, and when we were leaving the surgeon's office, he gave her a goodie bag with floss and a toothbrush and stuff, and the whole way home she kept asking if she could eat the candy that the dentist gave her. Every time I told her there was no candy, she looked so heartbroken, like a little kid when their goldfish dies or something. Then we stopped at CVS on the way home and she wandered off. I found her in the candy aisle holding a giant bag of fun-sized candy, and when I told her to put it back on the shelf, she dropped it on the floor and galloped away laughing at me. A little girl was going under and she was holding her mother's hand. She reached out for my hand with her other, and as she was going out she joined mine with her mother's and said, "You would be a nice daddy." I probably went beetroot red as I blushed.
Apparently when I was going under I told the anesthesiologist, "Don't mess this up, I know where you work."
Anesthesiologist here. For better or for worse, I'm a big Green Bay Packers fan, so I wear a scrub cap with the Packers name, colors on it. I was doing a pre-op evaluation on a kid who was a big New Orleans Saints fan, and when I walked into the room, his first words to me were, "Packers suck." I laughed and continued to prepare him and his family for his redo open-heart surgery procedure. Fast forward to surgery a couple days later, and his mom had come back to the OR as he was going to sleep. Given the fact this was a 3 or 4 time reduced sternotomy, going into the chest again, he had a higher risk of major complications from the surgery. I started to push some meds to have him go to sleep while his mom was holding his hand, and as he drifted off, he said, "Wait, I have to tell my mom something." She got emotional saying how much she loved him, and we were all waiting to hear what he had to say so urgently. I paused giving him the medication, but he was already well on his way to being under, and as he drifted off to sleep, he said, "Packers suck. Kid did great. Hope he is doing well." Smiley face. Edit. RIP. Inbox. Thank you for all the awards. The kid did great, and hopefully will not need any more surgery for 20+ years. Cheers everyone. My husband had knee surgery. After he woke up he half yelled half whispered APPPPPPPPLEEEEJUIIIIICE, so the nurse gave him apple juice, several small cups full. He grinned like a toddler and said apple juice and immediately flopped back and went back to sleep for all of 10 minutes until he woke back up gasping that he couldn't breathe. His mom, who I had met maybe 1 or 2 times at this point, went up to the foot of his bed to grab a nurse in the doorway and he bolted upright. That man projectile vomited pure apple juice directly into her face, body, the wall, the door, hallway. I have never seen anything like it in my entire life. His mom stood there soaked in juice vomit and he just rubbed his eyes and said, "Ah, I feel better." Bam. Back to sleep for another 2 hours. Lol.
I was put under for a few surgeries. The first one I saw a pile of seats or something and I started talking about how they looked like laser tag guns and invited him to go play laser tag after. The second was for a hysterectomy, and when I got wheeled into the room drugged up I screamed, "Time for everyone to see my vagina. Get excited." My oncologist said it made her day. I'm sure the anesthesiologist that did my son's dental surgery will never forget him. Specifically, because he came out after the fact clearly trying very hard not to laugh to tell my wife about it. Kiddo was just chatting away while he was getting ready. Now my son is autistic and at the time had a very distinct way of speaking and pattern of emphasis along with a lisp. I literally cannot translate how he sounded talking into text. Edit. Thanks, you, Schmobzola, for giving me a good idea of actually how to describe this. Imagine you Had a soundboard of Butters from South Park that had all these words on it from vastly different conversations and strung them together into the sentences below, and you'll have a pretty decent idea of it. He sounds a bit different than my son, but it's about as close as I can get. Anyway, just as they're getting ready to put him under, he goes, "You're gonna need some hardcore nighttime medicine 'cause I have ADHD and out, practically snoring even." They get to work, finish up and pull the mask off him. The literal second the mask was off his nose, he bolts upright and finishes his sentence from however long earlier. That stuff don't work good on me.
One of my patients coming out of sedation embarrassed her husband who was in the room by saying that during their sex he likes to have Vicks rubbed on his backside.
When coming out of it, I was really angry. My fiancé was trying to steal my ice cream. I didn't have any ice cream, but I was convinced he was trying to steal it. Am an anesthetist. Woke up a 70-years-old point who got a penile prosthesis implant for erectile dysfunction. First thing out of his mouth in his post-surgery stupor was to request a private room and find out when he could take this baby out for a test drive. He was a happily married jokester.